Today, I'm going to show you guys that size doesn't matter. Well, at least when we're talking about fishing rods. You see, I've been doing this series on TikTok where they tell me to make a rod out of something crazy, and it's my job to build and test it. It all started with this snow stake, and after posting the first video, all the comments were, make it bigger, make it more elaborate, and so I did. I eventually built a rod out of a Christmas tree. I built a rod out of a 25-foot PVC pole. But I think I hit my Mount Everest when I made a potato cannon that could shoot a rig 100 feet and reel it back in. After this video, all the comments shifted. People were no longer demanding I make it bigger and more elaborate. They were demanding I use a kid's caster or a child rod. But that's not really what this series is about. I don't want to waltz into a Walmart, grab something off the shelf and use it for its intended purpose. There's no fun in that, there's no intrigue.
Not to mention the sex appeal.
Yeah, that too. Anyway, I searched my house until I found the smallest thing that I think could be a pole. Now, you might think, oh, what could be a pole? It's got to just meet 3 basic requirements. It has to be stiff, it has to resist plastic deformation, and you have to be able to attach guides to it. Introducing the humble tent peg. Yes, this thing does meet every single requirement, so I fired up a live stream and started putting it together. Normally when I'm building these rods, I need to set multiple guides, create a reel holder. I often need to make my own binding materials, but no, not this time. All I needed to do was score the tip, melt some hot glue, and attach the guide. Once my guide was attached, I needed a reel, but it's pretty obvious that any commercial reel won't work. Instead, I found a spool, wrapped it with some 8-pound fishing line, and just stuck it at the end of the tent peg. Since it can spin freely, we technically have a fishing rod at this point, but this cannot handle any fish. In order to get enough torque to spin the reel when the fish is on, I'm going to need to create a crank. By the way, at this point, the stream devolved into me just playing a bunch of Cranked At remixes while I scavenged the house for anything useful. Eventually, I realized I could use a fork by bending the tines and inserting them into the structural slots of the spool. This also conveniently solved the casting problem. All I had to do to cast is just remove the fork, turn it vertically, and it releases the line. I tested it at the house and everything seemed to work, so I decided to take it into the ocean and see what we caught. Unfortunately, I picked a pretty bad week to test this out. This was during the atmospheric river, which tore up the PNW, and everyone on the coast was getting pounded. I checked into my motel, started doing chores, while keeping an eye on the skies, and eventually there was a break in the rain. I rushed down to the South Jetty, got in my trusty float, and... oh wait, I should probably explain the flamingo, right? Well, a couple of months ago, I made a fun discovery. Now, if you get this specific tide pattern with the southern wind and swell, and then you go to the Newport South Jetty, the current will pull you along this path. Now, those who have been to Newport might recognize this is just outside of the jetty structure, while still being outside the channel that all the boats go down. And if you guys look really carefully, it conveniently drops you off right at the parking lot. What this means is you can lower your weight all the way down to the bottom, reel up 2 feet, and then just let the ocean do all the work. The waves will jig your bait up and down. The current will slowly move you along the jetty structure, bringing your bait in front of new fish. And every time you catch a fish, all you have to do is net them, scoot back out to the jetty, land the fish, put them in your cooler, continue the flow. Also, since it's going to drop you off at the car, you have an easy way to unload your fish to the cooler, run down the jetty, hop back in the water, rinse and repeat. In my opinion, this is the most efficient way to fish the jetty, but it is highly wind and wave dependent, so I really would not do this unless you can read the ocean and have a solid backup plan. Anyway, now that I'm on the jetty, the rocks are incredibly slick, and those 12-foot swells out at sea meant that some of the waves were getting through the jetty and breaking on the rocks. I had to be extra careful when launching, especially since I know there's barnacles on these rocks, and I have an inflatable float. My brilliant idea to solve both of these problems was to jump into the float from the rocks, which didn't quite go to plan. Luckily, I didn't let go of the rod, and I was able to just get back in the floaty. For the next 5 or so minutes, it was a pretty normal float, and things were going well. Until suddenly they weren't. Now, remember what I said earlier about the path being very dependent on wind and waves? Well, out of nowhere, the storm started back up. Now, instead of having a nice calm ride, I was getting rocked and pushed into the rocks. At first, I wasn't even bothered by this. I figured this storm came out of nowhere, it's probably going to disappear just as quickly. And honestly, this is exciting, this is a good thing. You see, when the rain starts, predatory fish like rockfish and greenling come out of their holes to hunt. They know that when the rain is pounding the water, the prey can't hear them and they can't see them coming, so they're going to be much more active for those few minutes. Now, as I'm paddling back and forth in the current and trying to resist the wind, you might notice something. The storm is not dying down, it's getting worse. And that's when I suddenly remembered something. The wind is blowing south. If you rewind back to when I got into the water, the wind was blowing east. Now this is important because it means the storm cell can move. And if the storm cell moves to the wrong place, it will no longer be blowing me into the jetty. It'll be blowing me out into the open ocean where the 12-foot surf is. Now, don't worry. I'm still not in any danger. I'm wearing a wetsuit, I have a life jacket, it's an incoming tide, and worst case scenario, I'm a damn good swimmer. But I don't want to have to sacrifice my floaty and all my gear to Poseidon, so I made the decision to reel in and head to shore. This is unfortunately when the rod fails me. Remember how I said it, so if you pull the fork away, it'll spool? Well, if you accidentally pull the fork away when you're reeling in, it'll spool and tie a knot around the tent peg. Now I can no longer reel in, control the rig, and it's just too chaotic for me to try to fix my problem. On top of this, there is a sharp hook somewhere in the darkness underneath my inflatable flamingo. My only real option is to give up, pull in the line by hand, and intentionally tangle it into my fishing net so I can continue to safely get to shore. I lined myself up with the rocks, waited for a good break in the waves, and climbed out of the water. Look, I know I only spent 5 to 10 minutes with my line in the water, but just based on how easily it got tangled, I know it would be absolute chaos to try to bring a fish in. This is an obvious F-tier rod, which means that the next suggestion will definitely beat it. Let me know what I should make next, and I'll give it my best shot.